Hello. Hello. Does everyone want to grab a seat? We're going to kick things off. There's lots of seats in the middle. All right. All right. Welcome to Design Club 10. Thank you all very much for coming. It's great to see lots of familiar faces and lots of new ones as well. For those of you that are new to Design Club and wondering what's in store, I'm going to tell you this time because I didn't last time. We're going to have two 20-minute talks, each followed by some questions, and then we'll hang out a bit, talk shop about design, and then invariably end up at the pub, which I don't know which pub it is yet, but I'll tell you at the end. As for what the talks will be about, here is our tagline, where the creative community, that's us, figure out what's next, which is maybe a slightly pretentious way of saying that Design Club isn't about how we design. It's not about tools, plugins, or techniques, but it's more about why we design, who or what we're designing for. I've got slides for this. And I guess generally the bigger chat about what we do, how that impacts the world, and vice versa. And leading those conversations tonight are Anna, Liz, and Rachel from Triangirls, talking about how creating a community has helped them and lots of other women in their careers. And Nat Buckley from Bulb, who'll be talking about how they're building, I'm looking straight at you, a content, design, and research culture, bringing people together across disciplines to do their best work together. But before we get stuck into the talks, I want to say a couple of very quick thank yous. Firstly, and I didn't know I was going to do this, but to Jimmy and Walt, who are at the back there. They stepped in to help me run the event about 6 months ago when Tom and Camilla decided to step back from the event to pursue other projects, i.e. getting married and having a baby. Jimmy and Walt have been helping me put together these events ever since, also helping me plan some exciting new additions to Design Club that we'll hopefully be able to announce in the coming months. So thanks very much, Jimmy and Walt. A little round of applause there. And secondly, I'd like to thank our long-term supporters and friends of the event, Monzo, for hosting us tonight. They've been attending, sponsoring, and speaking at these events since they began, and it's a real privilege to be hosted by them again this eve. And I believe Artie is going to say a few words.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We're very excited to host Design Club again. I'm Artie. I'm a product designer here. So for those who don't know, Monzo is a bank, and our mission is to make money work for everyone. So I'll talk a little bit about our team and what it's like to be a product designer here. Our team, design discipline, is made up of about 30 people. That includes user researchers, product designers, and visual designers. You may have met us at various events. We're pretty friendly. So what I love about being a product designer at Monzo, I really love working in my cross-functional team. We solve problems together. Every voice is heard, so every decision we make has equal weight. I've been here about 1.5 years, and I constantly am learning from non-designers and designers. So if you want to know more about design at Monzo, please come talk to us after the event. And if every designer could raise their hand right now, please. Yeah, every Monzo designer, sorry. Yeah, mainly over there. Thank you.
All right, let's get to it. Please welcome to the stage Anna, Liz, and Rachel.
Thank you. Hello. Wow, there's quite a lot of you. Thanks for having us. It's great to be here at Design Club. It feels a little bit meta because we're a meetup, speaking at a meetup. There you go. I just wondered, out of interest, who here has heard of Triangirls? Oh, it's amazing. But anyway, we're Triangirls, and we're here to talk about how we can try to make tech a more fair industry for everyone. fun fact about this very meetup is that if it hadn't been for Design Club, I'm not sure Triangles as a community would exist. So in the early days of the Triangles Slack group, we came to this event to meet in real life, and not knowing if there would be any other women coming, without even speaking, Anna and I got to the pub like super early, like crazy early. And I think from there on, we just sort of buddied up for all these events. And yeah, that's how Triangles were born. So it's because of Design Club. And I just wanted to say a bit of a disclaimer here is that this talk focuses is all through the lens of being a woman in tech. But I think the tips and tricks that we're going to share would be valuable to anyone who feels that they may be a minority in tech. Oh, me. Yeah, I'm Rachel, and I'm a product designer. I did have my hand up earlier when you asked who's a designer. I started my career in a really small agency. There was only 6 people who worked there the whole time that I worked there, and it was really cool because I got to try my hand at all aspects of product design, so like project management, development, product design. So that was I think I was really fortunate. But the whole time I worked there, I was the only woman, and it actually came that I never encountered another woman professionally the whole time I worked there. And I think that might have been because we were working with early stage startups, and there actually isn't many female tech founders. But it's sort of become the norm. And I think as part of why Triangles exists as well is that it isn't and it doesn't have to be. And I work at Geckoboard now, which is great. And I work in like the most diverse team ever. It's really good.
So I'm Liz. I'm a digital product designer at Inktrack. And so I've been working in design for the last 7 years, and there's been a constant theme throughout that career path. And I've always been one of 2 women in any design team that I've been in. So, I've joined Triangles to try and find other women also working design and product.
Hello, I'm Anna. I'm a product design lead. I work at a company called Navoda. So about 5 years ago, I started traveling quite frequently for work. I moved to London, but I still felt very disconnected from the design community. So I worked in a team that didn't have many women in leadership. I wasn't seeing what I wanted to be at the future represented. And I get back, spoiler. And so from this, Triangles was born. So I've gone straight into this, so let's get to it. So you've probably seen our tagline, fuck ups, masturbation, and pay negotiation. Hilariously, our website gets blocked quite a lot at people's workplaces due to being tagged as pornography. So sorry about that, everyone. So who are we? What do we do? So we are a community founded by women, for women, that create a safe space for others to share their experiences. We have monthly meetups, breakfast events for parents, and the odd party here and there. It's the 3 of us running it in our spare time. We also work full-time jobs. We're so lucky that we work for companies that really support our mission. Otherwise, there's no way that we'd be able to do this. A question that's asked a lot is the name. So has anyone heard of the Triangles Slack group before? Well, yeah, recognize you all. That's true. So we created a channel back in the day called Triangirls because there was a gender balance problem, and we wanted to figure out why more women weren't getting involved in like the conversations online as well. And then from that, we discovered it worked better to meet in person, and that's where the event came from.
So we thought it was important to share with you all why our community is just for women. And when I say this, it sort of looks wrong, but it's true that women actually are a minority in tech. And I've drawn the short straw with this section of slides, so I apologise in advance that it's not the most uplifting reading. But I think, as Liz said, you can't solve a problem without understanding the problem. So I'm just going to share some statistics with you that we've found. So this is from Hired's recent report on the gender pay gap. And you can see that it's getting better, but it's quite a savage gap, it's quite extreme. And I also wanted to point out here that I think it's sad that whoever did this report, they'd only considered men and women in this. So that's not my data. But I think everyone knows that you know, women are a minority in tech, and I think even in this room there are a lot more men. So I just thought we would dig a little deeper into that the problem is more than just maybe the gender imbalance. So this is obviously a more general statistic, and when I do research for speaking at events like this is just referenced in so many articles, and I just see it again and again, and you know, it's shit. So this might be more familiar for some some people in the room. So there was someone in Triangles Slack community posted a salary survey quite recently, and this was a subsection of the people who considered themselves in senior or lead positions. This is in London. There's a hefty chunk for the male. And this was a more recent survey that ended up in this Slack community. And this was an external spreadsheet that was, I think it was global. So this is from the UK tab. This is just me filtering the people in lead positions. And obviously it's just male and female in that column as well. Again, I think it's quite representative that there are more men in senior positions. And this one really shocked me. Like, what? And the research from this article was showing that females of any age are more likely to stay in junior positions for a longer time. And when we were looking at this, I was thinking, well, I wonder if imposter syndrome is something that's in play here. It's something that a lot of our community come to us about, and we have had events specifically focused on imposter syndrome, but I think a lot of minorities in tech do suffer really, really heavily with this. And I wondered if this could go some ways to explain why this pisses me off. I mean, we're talking the same job and women are earning less, and it's just so unfair. And I think this is the main reason that triangles exist. We just really want women to get the same as their counterparts are getting paid. Every one of our events, we try to get women to leave with actionable tips just to really help themselves get more money. So why do we think it is that the figures are quite depressing for women in tech? So we did some research. And actually, the problem seems to start way back before we're even entering the workplace. And I saw an article on the BBC recently that said career aspirations are already limited by the age of 7 due to like ingrained stereotyping for social background, gender and race. I mean, the numbers are, they're not great. And this one really surprised me as well, but the more we researched this topic, the less surprised we were. And in this article, the main reasons that women were saying they leave was weak management support, a lack of opportunity, and a lack of work-life balance. And then I wondered, maybe women are leaving due to a lack of promotion. I mean, we've seen the stats. And if you look at this, it just seems wrong. And it seems really old-fashioned. And I think, working in tech, there's an assumption that we're in this really forward-thinking industry, where actually a lot of it is actually really old school. And I feel like it's no coincidence that I use a Mad Men gif for this.
Thank you. So thankfully, it's not all bleak. That seems pretty bleak, right? We have learned so much from our speakers at our events to help give us the confidence to make changes ourselves. So we want to share with you the top takeaways. So it's a thing that you'll come across all the time, that women and men approach job applications differently. Men will apply if they feel that they meet some of the criteria. Women won't if they don't meet 100%. So we had someone talk, Camila. She had a talk on confidence cardio, and something that she said that really stood out to me is that she will apply for roles that she doesn't feel at all qualified for. She says that this gives her the experience, and then also when that starts to progress, she gets the confidence boost and understands that she can go for roles that are above what she originally thought. If you're hiring for a role, I think it's very important that you look into inclusive and non-gendered language. There are actually free tools out there that you can put your job spec into. And there's one called the Gender Decoder tool, and it helps you understand what type of language could make women turn away from your job ad. So recruiters will ask you your current salary. They always will, but you absolutely do not need to tell them. If you do tell them and you are currently being underpaid, then you're kind of stuck there. Instead, you can turn it around and say, well, actually, based on my experience and skills, where would you place me? They have so much knowledge of talking to so many people within the role that will be super helpful for you, and you're not letting yourself get stuck in a particular bracket. So this comes from the wage equality report from Hired. It turns out that women are discovering that they're being paid less than their peers by having a discussion with their colleagues. So I know it feels uncomfortable, but please absolutely do this. I've done it myself, and it made me realize so much about how much more I could be paid. Ask your colleagues who are in a place of privilege. If you feel a bit uncomfortable about this, it's sometimes easier to say, I'm looking for a pay rise. This is what I'm currently on at the moment. Do you feel that I'm being compensated fairly? That's like an easier way in. It's also helpful to ask people who have a similar job to you at other companies. Communities are great. Triangirls has been brilliant for this. Design Club is also super helpful. And there's also some salary surveys floating around on Twitter, and we'll be happy to share these after this. Be super brave and always negotiate. To me, it felt very, I was always very nervous about this. It felt very counterintuitive. I was like, I'm being offered something really like brilliant and exciting, but what I want, why would I push back? That doesn't feel right. But actually, never accept less if it's your dream company or job. That excitement of being like, yes, I've got this, there tends to be a little bit aside, and push for that. Like, you deserve that. So please always try and push, try and negotiate. Don't be shy talking to your boss. If you want that promotion, say, putting little hints here and there, your manager's not going to pick up on that and be like, oh, okay, they want a promotion, I'm going to give them that promotion. I think it's something that you really need to bring forward in your one-to-ones. And even when you're creating a progression framework together, tell your boss where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, and map out your goals based on that. When you go to your one-to-ones, it's great to collect like even small wins, like little achievements, things that you're proud of, things that your team have said have been super helpful, and bring that to your reviews. When you start having this conversation with your boss, you'll also find out when the company starts doing those pay reviews, and then you'll be ready for when that comes around. And you can't be what you can't see. So it's so important for women to see other women in senior roles. Find a mentor outside of your role if you can't see it at your workplace. When we do our events, we always make sure that someone who works in management, who is a woman, comes out and does the introduction, so you can have that visibility there.
So, okay, you might have heard all this and thought, yeah, great, brilliant, but does it actually work? And I can categorically say, yeah, it does. So, before I joined Triangirls, I attended an event in April last year, and it's the only event that I've been. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the only event I've been to more than once. So sorry, Design Club, I didn't attend one. So yeah, it is really good to see a room full of women and having women speakers there who were confident, and they got up in front of everyone, spoke, and they spoke about their problems, but more importantly, how they overcame them problems. And so after going to them events, I was full of more confidence. I could see that I could actually progress my career by myself. And then, because I was the probably #1 fan of Triangirls, driving Rachel and Anna mad with it, and they asked me to come on board and help organise events. So luckily, I've been on the other side as well, and being able to create this platform and this network where women can come, share their stories. And as you can see from Hannah and Fred's quotes here, they've been able to negotiate their salaries, ask for promotions, but more importantly, they've gained that confidence to take ownership of their own career. But at the same time, though it's great that we tell women, that they can do the work and push themselves in their career, it's not just all on them, it's also part of men's problem too, basically, to try and close that gap in pay and other areas. So what can you do? So the #1 thing, what we would guarantee that you do, is call out bad behaviour when you see it in the workplace. So if you're in a a position of privilege and power and respected. And if you see something bad happen, then call it out. So bad behaviour might be, I don't know, I've experienced it sometimes and maybe someone else has. You've been in a meeting, you're trying to contribute an idea and you've been interrupted, spoke over, or even worse is when someone tells your idea back to you. That's the best one. So if that happens and you see that, stop and say, sorry to interrupt whoever you're interrupting. I think Anna wanted to say something there. Do you want to continue? Or you might say, oh, I don't think you finished, Rachel. Do you want to carry on with what you were saying? And that not only gets back on track to that person's idea, but it also kind of like a little acknowledgement that, yeah, you're on their side and helping them. We've also got sponsorship. So this is, big stat, 20% of promotions is due to sponsorship. So if you don't know what that is, that might be that if you're a senior designer or you might be just in a privileged position as well, you have a better connection to those in management or say the hiring or the HR process. So if you've got a junior designer on the team or someone who's due a promotion or a new project, you can say to the people up there, how about we give this opportunity to that person, or actually they've done really good work this last quarter, they deserve the pay rise or the promotion. And then finally, this is another big one as well, be selfless. So we say that there's, pass up and pass on. So the strategy is that people in privileged positions do more by doing less. So what we mean by that is, once again, whether, say, a big project comes in, you've done the third one this year, is there someone in your team that deserves that opportunity and that space to try out something? Say it's a workshop, for example. They've never run one before, but you have. Can you give them that opportunity to then run that workshop? So not only do you provide a space for them, once again, it shows that you're supporting their career growth as well. So to sum up, be aware of your biases and your privilege. Be an ally and a sponsor to those at work. And finally, don't put all the pressure on your job or your co-workers to support you, and build a network outside of work. So if you want to know more about Triangirls or you want to come to our event, sign up to our newsletter, follow us on social media. So we're on Twitter and Instagram. And just retweet us and be all nice about us. And if you want to see past events, we've got some bits on Instagram on our highlights as well as our website. And a big thank you to Mina, who done our slide designs. Also, lots of people in this room who support us continually. And Design Club for having us, really appreciate that. And Monzo for hosting us. Oh, yeah. Any questions? You can ask us after as well. Like, feel free to grab us. Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. I think it's a great initiative and opportunity. I'm really wondering, what's your next step? Like, what do you plan to do in a more accept over than that? Like, kind of your roadmap, basically, if you got one.
Oh.
So we started off doing talks and we tried some panels, and we've been doing a lot more workshops that I think have been super helpful. So we've been going down that route. At the moment, like, we're growing quite a lot, and we always want to make sure that everyone can come along. We don't always have big spaces. So I think breaking that up and having more workshops and then having talks, that's kind of the route of where we're going. But for now, we're pretty much planned up until November with our event, which we're pretty stoked about. So we're going to be continuing like this, and then maybe figure out what we're going to do for 2021. Thank you. Anybody?
I don't know if everyone heard that, but he was asking, what are we doing to educate men? I guess we're doing a lot to educate women on what they can do. And to be honest, other than this event, this is the first time really that we've been able to speak to a big room full of men. Oh yeah, we had an event last year on allyship, which was actually really good. And I think we should try and do one of those again. I think it's really important that men hear this story. And I think we were a bit nervous this evening that it sounded like really negative for women and really negative for men as well. But it's really important that we did get to share those statistics and those stories. It's hard. I think most of them were from the UK. Yeah. Yeah, the big pie chart that had the bigger chunk for men with the pink one was London. Yeah. 19th of March at Intercom. That's top knowledge, no one knows that yet. Yeah.
So it's going to sound like big enough up, but definitely come to a Triangles event for sure. But as like we mentioned on the slide, looking outside of your company is a good place to start. And I think there's a lot of focus on finding like an official mentor and just having like one person that you go to a lot, but actually building networks. And so, for example, like Triangles, there's a lot of people there with loads of different experience. Everyone's happy to chat and they've got different experience levels. And you can create those like friendship groups or like at least, well, I know with you two that you buddied up and they went on to find jobs together. So it doesn't have to be like this official big thing, but yeah, just finding networks and communities. Yeah.
I also think it's worth mentioning as well with mentorship. I think it's quite easy for you to think, I need to find someone senior than me. Actually, I find that my mentors that have helped me the most have been buddying up with people who are in my position or in a slightly different one, and it's guided me down different paths. Everybody has different experiences and knowledge. And I think, yeah, it's great finding someone in leadership, but it's also helped me as well just to kind of find my network at events like this.
Anyone? Oh, one snuck in. I think I've got too many to talk about like now. I think come and speak to us afterwards and we'll give you absolutely loads. Definitely come and find us. We'll find. Cool. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much. That was awesome. We should definitely talk about doing more collaborations with Design Club and Triangles in the future. That'd be great. Okay, we're going to go straight into the next talk. Please welcome to the stage Nat Buckley of Bulb.
Hi. That's me. I want to talk to you about teams today. I'm not, I've already been introduced, but here's more. Hi. I was practicing this talk today in a completely empty room at work, and it was quite dispiriting. So this is already a massive improvement. I'm a lead designer at Bulb. Bulb is the biggest green energy supplier in the UK at the moment. And we got there by being really great with our customer experience. This is a screenshot from our app. And that having this amazing and simple experience allowed us to grow relatively quickly. Just one note before I properly get started. We call our customers members because without them, we wouldn't be able to generate so much demand for green electricity. So without them, we wouldn't be able to make a really big change in how much renewable electricity is generated in the UK. So when you hear me say that, it's like, it's not like a weird cult thing. It's like they literally really matter to us. So Bulb was started in, I think, 2014 by Hayden and Amit. And one of their goals was to provide a really amazing customer experience. And when they started, it was just the two of them initially. That was, I think, now four and a bit years ago. But by the time the start of 2018 rolled around, we already had 250,000 members, so people who buy electricity from us or gas, and about 100 Bulbarinos, who are the people working for Bulb. Sorry, another weird insider term, but bear with me. Today, we have 1.6 million members, and something like around 600 people work for Bulb at the moment. So I'm telling you this because this really big change in like how many people we actually have to serve and how many people work for us had an impact on how we do work within the company and how we do design. So when we started out, the design at Bulb sort of, I think, worked really similarly to quite a lot of product organizations in a model inspired by Spotify, where you have designers, researchers, content designers, representatives of every discipline in a multidisciplinary team with their own mission and autonomy to figure out how to execute on that mission. And that worked really well. It's a system that allows teams to move really quickly, make decisions fast, and have all their skills and experience in the room necessary in order to be able to move at speed. But as we grew, this model started presenting some interesting challenges. For example, in some of the teams, designers were working really, quite a lot. They had to work really fast. There was tons to do. In other teams, they weren't always working on as many member-facing features as other teams, so perhaps there was a little bit less work going around. It made it really hard for designers in the really busy teams to be proactive about sharing their knowledge with the rest of the team and mentoring others and sharing ideas across whole Bulb. And there came a point where we had only a handful of designers, but suddenly 12 of those teams that needed support. So the whole approach started being a little bit unsuited to how we were trying to work. So we made some changes. We took designers, content designers, and researchers out of those product teams, and we put them sort of outside of that, and decided that each one of those representatives of those disciplines could partner with potentially multiple teams at any given time, depending on the type of work that was being required or what else was going on in those teams. So, for example, a designer might partner with a couple of teams. A content designer might also partner with the same couple of teams, and a researcher might end up actually supporting many more teams than that. So what that meant was that the people who were sort of potentially most connected to shaping the user experience ended up forming a single team that then partnered with other product teams. So this new model, we call it a centralized partnership, because it's not quite centralized and those people are not quite embedded in those teams. But it means that the people most responsible for delivering the great user experience can work more closely together. So you won't be surprised to hear that we call this team content design and research. And it has, like, this model has a lot of upsides that we're really enjoying at the moment. One of them is being able to meet the needs of smaller teams a little bit more effectively. It means that in that team, we're sharing cross-discipline expertise a lot more efficiently because it can be a lot more informal and sort of quick. It means that setting and maintaining a high work standard is also really easy because everything is a bit more informal and quick. And it means that within that team, we get to see ideas from all over Bulb and we get to share them with one another. It means that we get to help teams cross-pollinate ideas as well. And just as I joined Bulb, nearly a year ago, a content design and research team began to form. And it was at the front of my mind that, you've got all these really smart, really talented, really motivated people, and you're just like throwing them all together into this completely new team. And it was really important to think about how I can help that team gel more quickly and help become really effective fast. So it's kind of easy to think that sometimes it's enough to do step one, which is put smart people in the team, and that step two will just like magically happen. Sadly, it doesn't really work like that. Google spent a lot of money and quite a bit of time trying to understand what it is that makes teams really high performing. They launched this research project where they looked at all kinds of different teams across Google. Teams that were organized in different ways, had different rituals, used different tools to figure out how to do work or how to divvy up the tasks, looked at every possible imaginable aspect of working together in the team to figure out, is it this thing that makes those teams work really well together? And what they found was that how people work together in a team matters much more than who those people are. So people who were incredibly high-performing individuals could underperform in teams that weren't particularly suited to working well together. And conversely, people who weren't necessarily superstars were performing amazingly well in teams that were set up really well to work together. And the project that Google ran in order to find this out was called Project Aristotle, if you're interested in that. But what the researchers concluded eventually was that the good teams were distinguished from the dysfunctional ones by how the teammates actually treated one another. And this sort of treating one another in this special way, there's actually an idea that has a name in psychology called psychological safety. And it's a phenomenon that has been studied not just by Google, but lots of other academics to understand what it is that helps people work together. So it's not necessarily a new idea. And I think in hindsight, once I tell you a bit more about it, you'll think that it's like totally obvious. But I think it's really useful to give it a name and talk about it deliberately and understand how to create that feeling. So what is psychological safety? It's a feeling that you can admit that you don't know something and people won't think you're an idiot. It's a feeling that you can safely disagree with people on your team and they won't think that you're now their enemy. It's not going to damage your relationship in any way. It's a feeling that you can safely, you can admit to making mistakes, because we all do them all the time, and it's just a part of normal life to make mistakes and recover from those. And it's this kind of like sense that if you admit to that, your colleagues won't think any less of you. And those things allow you to take risks, because you know that if those risks don't necessarily deliver on their promise and things go really badly, then people might hold you accountable, but they're not gonna think any less of you. And altogether, those things mean that you get to be yourself, you get to try out stuff, you're in a safe environment where you can try out ideas, make mistakes, figure stuff out together, and that's really conducive to creativity and really good collaboration. And actually, the longer I do my job, the more I realize how important knowing how to create this kind of environment is. And I sort of wish that someone had told me while I was still at university that was going to be a really big part of my job, and not just knowing how to use Photoshop. So I hear you say, okay, so Nat, you said a couple of times this is not a new idea, this is kind of obvious. Why are you telling me this? We're going to answer this question with a bit of audience participation. So I want you to raise your hand if you currently work in a team. Hold your hands there. But if you're a manager or you're responsible for a team or you have a lead in your title or whatever, put your hand down. Everyone else, keep your hands up. Cool. So to the people who have their hands up, I'm talking to you today and I'm telling you that you're not off the hook, although you can put your hands down. If you're going to be waiting for a head of design or a creative director or your team lead or whoever to create this kind of sense of psychological safety in the team, you might end up potentially waiting for a long time and missing an opportunity to influence how those conditions are built within your team, and miss an opportunity to potentially achieve better performance yourself. And this matters because modern work looks a bit like this. It's really highly collaborative. You get people from all kinds of different disciplines with different types of upbringing, understanding, experience, coming together to solve problems, and you need to all be able to rely on one another's ideas really quickly and support each other in that process. And even at Apple, which I think to me has always been like this, like I had this image in my mind that is, full of really influential individuals who have their own genius ideas that they're able to make in the world. But even at Apple, their promotional videos promoting jobs to potential applicants emphasize the importance of collaboration, working with other people on really cool stuff. And almost all of the job ads I looked at talk about collaborating with different disciplines or different teams within the company. So the reality of even some of those big organizations is that work really isn't necessarily always about individuals. As I was telling one of my colleagues about writing this talk, he reminded me about this show I used to watch as a kid called Voltron, the Legendary Defender, which is about these 5 characters. Each one of them, they come together to form this giant robot. And this is what the robot looks like. It's on the right. And like the head, the hands, and the legs, you can see that they all have faces. And inside of those faces, there are those characters, each controlling like one part of the body. And they all have different interests. They have different weaknesses. They have different characteristics. And they have to constantly communicate really well and make the most of their sort of differences in order to be able to defeat all of their powerful enemies. So I think like when teams are working really well, it kind of feels like that. It's like magic, like all of these weird things coming together, and it feels great. But when it doesn't quite work, it can get really bad. When I moved to the UK, it was in about 2005, 2006, I'm not interested in football, but I had already heard about all these amazing footballers that England had, for example, Beckham, Rooney, and Frank Lampard. And they were so famous, even to somebody, who didn't really have interest in the sport, because they were absolutely exceptional players for their regional teams. And those teams, those players, even though they were absolutely exceptional in their own right, when they all came together to form a national team, they failed to bring home the accolades that the fans were eagerly waiting for, and really underperformed relative to the expectations that people have placed on them. So when in sports those teams don't deliver, it's like a very visible failure, and the stakes are really high. But in design, this might still translate to people who are themselves, really motivated and really good at their job, not being able to fully achieve that potential within that particular team. So when I joined Bob and started thinking about this, it meant a lot to me to find some ways to deliberately create that sense of psychological safety so that we could perform well together. So I have some tips. Some of them were, about bribery using cake, but I have some real tips, things that you can use from tomorrow, regardless of what your role is, to start sort of growing this sense of psychological safety in the teams that you work in. So here we go. There are some things you can do directly to model those positive behaviors. And I'm going to start with my favorite one, which is to receive feedback graciously. You have probably either been in workshops about giving feedback, or you've read about giving feedback. Giving feedback is like a super popular topic right now. Everyone's talking about it. But what's not discussed nearly as often is receiving feedback in a way that rewards the person giving you feedback for having the courage to risk your relationship by telling you some important truths. There's a really good book, thanks for the feedback. As I was reading it, it made me realize how I react to feedback, or very critical feedback, which is that I get a knot in my stomach, my cheeks flush, I get red, look like a Pikachu, get really hot. So in order to like not just go, what are you talking about? I have to remind myself that I'm a calm and composed person who treats other people well. And in order to slow down that initial reaction, I try to ask as many questions as possible. And it has, a twofold effect. One, it lets me find out more about the feedback and I get to understand it much better, but it also lets me get over this initial reaction and react, in a way that makes me feel proud. So it's a win-win. But doing that to other people sort of shows them that you care about them, that you care about what they want to tell you about, and you reward them and sort of show them that you're open and receptive and you want to work together well. The other thing that you can do is to admit when you're wrong. So whenever I talk about my work, I try to highlight the things that didn't work particularly well, or some of the mistakes I made, or bad choices that I made, partly because it helps normalize this idea that, we're all doing it and it's normal, but also because it might be an interesting learning opportunity for someone else to not just get like the perfect picture of what happened, but, the reality. I think doing this also signals to others that they can give you feedback without much risk because it's something that you do all the time yourself. So I think it makes it easier for people to speak up when needed. And as you progress through your career, like making it easier for other people to speak up and tell you about things going wrong becomes more important, not less, because the sort of cost of your mistakes becomes higher and higher. And when you disagree with a decision that a team has made or a decision that you made together, still being able to commit and deliver really great work despite your reservations or despite difference in opinion shows the team that you value them and that you respect them and that you're a team player, you're there to together do really good work. I think if you can do that really graciously, I think that's a super amazing thing to show respect. And another thing you can do is to make sure that everyone on the team regularly feels heard. Something that the researchers working for Google noticed for the high-performing teams was that roughly everyone on the team spoke about the same amount, not necessarily in the same session, but they all seem to participate equally in discussions and conversations. And this is something that you can foster relatively easy. If you go to a lot of meetings, you can ask organizers to send out an agenda in advance, which means that people who find it harder to think on the spot can prepare for those meetings. If you run meetings, you can do that as well. You can send out an agenda in advance. You can assign specific roles in meetings or workshops to ask people to participate in a specific way to get out of them their contribution. You can give time to note down thoughts before having the discussion at meetings. So something I sometimes do is I ask people to spend 1 minute writing things down, and then after that minute, we then discuss a subject. Or you can make sure that people are heard in sort of lower stakes informal catch-ups if they don't really feel very comfortable participating in certain meetings to make sure that their contribution is still included. There's a website that has like a very weird design, so I'm slightly embarrassed to share it, but it's called Liberating Structure and has like lots of sort of frameworks for running different workshops and meetings that allow people to be heard and fully participate. So there are lots of things that you can do through modeling those behaviors, but at some point you're going to run into limitations. After all, you're only one, unless some of you have been cloned and or have a doppelganger, in which case I apologize. But the trick that you can use to help yourself establish those norms even further is to bootstrap them through the culture within your organization. And the culture is really just a set of repeating patterns that other people also pick up on and do. So if you can set those things in motion, then other people will help you, and those positive behaviors will multiply, hopefully. So one of those things that you can do is to make space for setting expectations within an organization. At Bob, when we sort of formed that new team, one of the things that we did was we had a workshop. Actually, it was on giving and receiving feedback. But at the beginning of that workshop, we wrote down the expectations that we had from each other in that particular meeting. And like, if you can see on that picture, some of those things that we wrote down are so obvious, like, be honest, be empathetic, keep in mind we're all learning. But even writing down those really obvious things help us, really set in stone this expectation that we treat each other really, really well. And those are the norms around how we work together. And actually, that exercise worked so well that we made this part of our onboarding. So when you join Bob, you can read about it and you can see how we want to work together. So doing this in kickoffs or workshops for like a specific project or in a new group of people is likely to get everyone on the same page and work really well. And this is such a simple idea, but it works at different scales as well. So that little one was just a few people in the room doing a particular workshop. But at Bob, we also managed to find a way to set expectations for the whole company. So last year, we reviewed all the values that we hold ourselves to, because when they were initially set, Bob was still really quite small and had different kinds of challenges and different kinds of teams working in different ways. So the time came for us to look at those values and figure out, are they still helping us? Are they holding us back? Is there anything about those that's missing? Like, do we need to find a new way to talk about how we like to be with one another? So we did this after a period of growth. So it feels like something that should happen every time there is like a significant change or something new happens, so that we can remind ourselves as a group what it is that we expect from each other. Another thing that you can help set up through culture is making space for feedback. At Bob, we do this by pairing on problems together, doing sketching sessions, trying to keep those to be like as low effort and sort of lo-fi as possible, and involve people from around the company who then get to also participate in this idea that like giving feedback is actually quite easy because there are all those informal opportunities to do that. And it makes it, if you can make it like a part of a shared toolkit, then you can see other people taking on those kinds of meetings and running them themselves. And actually, when I first joined Bob, content designers, and researchers were sort of distributed across the whole company. So we were lacking those informal opportunities to talk to one another outside of those organized sessions. So once a week, I put a meeting in the calendar for everyone to gather in a social space to work together. And that was such a massive hit because it was for the first time that we spent like an extended period of time working next to each other, critiquing one another's work, hearing what everyone else is up to, and having the opportunity to sort of input or be interested in outside of like very specific goals for a particular meeting. And that worked so well that we ended up actually sitting together in one area of the office, which means that we get to retain this bit of a studio culture, even working in a product company. It has some downsides as well. It means that we have to be a lot more proactive working with the rest of the company to make sure that we're also present for all kinds of discussions and that we're involved with engineers directly and so on. But I think it also means that we've created a space for to mentor one another and to have these informal opportunities a lot more. Another thing that's really important to use your culture to do is to celebrate one another's work and, really enjoy the fact that we're getting to achieve these really amazing things together that we wouldn't have been able to achieve as individuals. So show and tells are an amazing way to do that, as long as it doesn't require a lot to participate. So this is a picture from early days at Bob where almost the entire company could gather together in front of one screen. That's no longer the case. Now we have to have lots of different show and tells, but because it's such a good format that works really well for these kinds of things, it gets repeated across the whole company in lots of different ways. And we do that on a larger scale as well. So at the weekly all hands meeting, this is a picture from one of those. We also celebrate work in the same way as we do at show and tells. But you get to get a lot more applause at those. And I think reflection is another thing that you can use your culture to establish. Doing regular retrospectives at the end of a project, or even just like taking out your teammates for lunch and asking them how things have been going recently is like a very easy and relatively informal way to do that. And I think retrospectives have a tendency to like get really easily established in an organization as well. They're not hard to do well either. So with very little prep, you can build a framework for people to have a regular opportunity to figure out whether working together, like what's missing and what we could carry on replicating. So I want to finish by summarizing whether and answering this question whether this is still design. And I actually happen to think that it is, because it is part of your responsibility to give yourself an opportunity to perform really well within teams. And because so much of the work is highly collaborative, it doesn't make sense for you to wait for someone else to make those conditions happen within the team. I believe that craft of design isn't just about Sketch and isn't just about being able to use design systems, but it is about being able to work with other people really effectively and help bring their contributions to your work. Thanks. Questions? That's a really good question. I don't think I've ever worked in an old school organization, so there are probably a lot of challenges that I've never come across. At Bob, we're still quite small and scrappy, although there are almost 100 or maybe over 100, 600 employees at the moment. The content design and research team is still relatively small, and the teams we tend to work with are also like relatively small. So any challenges in communications are actually quite manageable to resolve, I think, by simply talking to people and figuring out what's needed. I think one of the interesting things about working in a scale up, I guess, is that you know we've got a lot of the culture that comes from startup world and agile and making sure that we do retrospectives and reflect on the process all the time and figuring out how we keep moving really fast. And I think those things are probably like a you know that it's really hard to I think have like a difficult working culture when you have retrospectives happening regularly for every single team. I think so. I think so. Like, if you were the only person trying to create a sense of psychological safety in the whole company, and everyone else was really competitive and trying to, be, I don't know, using one another for their own success, then I think the chances of you succeeding at creating that particular environment would have been slim. I don't know the exact ratio. Content design and research, there's less than 20 of us. Majority of that is designers. And I think the product team overall is between 100 and 200 people. I'm not entirely sure. And I don't know what the spread of those roles is, but yeah, I totally recognize the fact that it's sometimes really hard to like give other people exactly the kind of level of flexibility and attention and sort of design time that they need. We just try to make the best we can do. We're trying to be really open as possible about what's coming up for us, what other teams need from us, what capacity we have. and make sure that everyone's involved in, knowing about those plans. But a lot of the time we do have to say no and push back because we just can't do everything. Unfortunately, I don't. The job at Bob, like part of the reason why I was hired was to help build a team and make sure that everyone was happy and doing really great work. Like that's literally part of my role. And previously, I've done this sort of in a guerrilla way and in places where I happened to be working and no one ever complained. One more? No? There's a really great blog post by Lara Hogan called The Feedback Equation, which I don't actually remember the equation off the top of my head, but she talks through basically like how to best prepare yourself and depersonalize what you have to say in order for it to be as effective as possible. One of the things that she talks about there is like trying to like part of this like reason for depersonalizing the feedback is that if you tell someone something that they don't want to hear, it's very easy to take it personally and have this like instant sort of fear primal reaction. And she talks through like techniques to try to like figure out how can you phrase things so that you can get away from causing that reaction, and how to actually try to find the words so that it could land a bit more gently, but still directly with the person. I mean, that doesn't always work perfectly because we're humans, and there probably isn't like a magical series of words that you can say that will have exactly the effect that you want. But as long as you're compassionate and understanding, and give people time to compose themselves and react and answer questions, or help them participate in like figuring out what format works best for them, I think then you have a really good chance of success. Basically, like care about them and figure out how to be heard. Oh, thank you.
Okay, that is us done. Thank you all very much for coming. Another round of applause for our lovely speakers. And for Monzo for hosting us again. All right, so now I think how long have we got here, Artie? When do we get kicked out? We have a while, and then so have some more drinks, have some more if there's any more pizza. I can't see, and then we're going to go to the pub, which is Jimmy, the singer nearby. So hope to see you there. Thanks very much again for coming. Have a good night. Cheers.